Hey guys, Emmanuel here, and before I jump into this video, I just want to make sure that you guys hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps the video out a lot. I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to do that. Alright, now that's over, guys. I came across something that just blew my mind away, and I couldn't believe it. So ESPN reporter Brian Windhorst, who is a kind of counterpart to, Adrian Wojnarowski. You guys, the guy who breaks, the huge stories whenever a superstar is traded. Well, Brian Windhorst is kind of a counterpart to him. He breaks some stories, but it isn't as big as Adrian Wojnarowski. Well, anyways, Brian has a podcast on Spotify. It's called Brian Windhorst and the Hoop Collective. And this week's episode was very interesting because he was talking on there about basketball with fellow reporters Tim McHone and Tim Bontemps. Both of these two other guys are reporters. Tim McHone is another ESPN reporter who covers the NBA for ESPN, and Tim Bontemps is a reporter who covers the NBA for the Washington Post. Well, anyways, they were talking about the current situation of the Brooklyn Nets and the Toronto Raptors and the Kevin Durant trade, right? This trade has basically got the two parties, the Toronto Raptors and the Brooklyn Nets, at an impasse. Essentially, they are not moving forward and they're not making any progress on the trade whatsoever. And this is because Brooklyn Nets want Scottie Barnes in the Kevin Durant trade, while the Toronto Raptors are not willing to budge. They're not giving an inch. They see Scottie Barnes as untouchable. He's not going to be in a trade at all. And both parties are at a stalemate. While they were discussing it, Brian Windhorst and Tim Bontemps said that they do agree with the kind of consensus around the NBA that they wouldn't give up Scottie Barnes for Kevin Durant right now, and I agree with that. But Tim McHone had, some intel that we, the public, don't know about. I want to remind you guys that these guys are very credible reporters, and they rub shoulders and have contacts of executives and NBA personnel that we, the public, just don't have access to. So when they say stuff, it's kind of, there's some validity to it. So Tim McHone said that he actually knows an NBA executive who he respects that says that he would actually trade Scottie Barnes for Kevin Durant, but he wouldn't trade Kevin Durant for Donavan Mitchell, because as you all know, Donavan Mitchell is also on a trading blocks, and the Toronto Raptors were also in the sweepstakes for Donavan Mitchell until the price for him got way too high. But the first thing that came to my mind when I heard this was, wow, that's insane, that's crazy, right? Because it's kind of a general consensus around the NBA and amongst the fan, especially Toronto Raptors fans, that you just shouldn't trade Scottie Barnes away for Kevin Durant. And the second thing that came to my mind was, I bet it's an executive of a dysfunctional team, because that's the only way, that's the only thing that can explain this. It's probably an executive of the New York Knicks or the Sacramento Kings or Indiana Pacers or some other dysfunctional franchise who hasn't tasted success in decades, who is squandering to make anything to try and get a superstar, because their team normally doesn't either land superstars, hasn't been irrelevant, or they can't nail anything in a draft, and they would make this outrageous, crazy leap to trade for Kevin Durant and mortgage away their future, because that's essentially what Toronto would be doing. If the Toronto Raptors today traded away Scottie Barnes for Kevin Durant, they would effectively be mortgaging away their future. There are NBA executives, there are teams, believe it or not, that would do that, right? Teams that just have not seen a lick of success, right? They haven't been to the playoffs, they can't nail anything in the drafts, nobody comes to their cities. These teams, they have personnel in their front offices that would make irrational decisions. And the third thing that came to my mind was, there's a reason why Masai Ujiri, the president and GM of the Toronto Raptors, hasn't made that trade. Because that trade has been on the table for a while, right? There's a reason why Masai Ujiri hasn't made that trade. Masai Ujiri is a very respectable, highly intelligent, highly coveted GM. If he hasn't made that move, something tells you, all right, it's probably the right move. And I agree with them, because Scottie Barnes, right, is the cornerstone of the Toronto Raptors' future. Everything from here on out is going to be built around Scottie Barnes. I just made a video about Scottie Barnes and his potential in the future, and how great he's going to be in the future. MVP, superstar caliber player. I highly recommend you guys go check out that video. I'm going to leave a link in the description. But anyways, Scottie Barnes is untouchable right now. There are a number of guys in the NBA that I would trade Scottie Barnes for, but Kevin Durant is not one of them right now, and that's because Kevin Durant's 34 years old. Listen, I am one of those guys. I'm one of those rare Toronto Raptors fans that actually advocate for us, the Toronto Raptors, to trade for Kevin Durant. See, there are really two parties in the Toronto Raptors fan base right now. There are the ones who think we shouldn't trade for Kevin Durant because Kevin Durant is selfish, right? Kevin Durant is a diva. He would destroy the Toronto Raptors like how he destroyed the Brooklyn Nets. And there's the camp that's very small that thinks that, you know, we should get Kevin Durant. And I'm on the side of we should get Kevin Durant, right? Because I think we should get Kevin Durant because Kevin Durant is still one of the most talented players in the NBA right now. He is talented enough to challenge Giannis Antetokounmpo, LeBron James, Luka Doncic for best player in the league. That's how good he is. And I believe that he's going to stay at that caliber for the next at least 2 years, maybe 3 years. Because Kevin Durant is 34 years old right now. I think at 37, he's going to fall off that category of best player in the league, top 5 players in the league. But I still think that we, the Toronto Raptors, should trade for Kevin Durant, because within those 3 years, I highly believe that we, the Raptors, would be able to reach a finals or two, at least one finals. Because, well, I always think about it. If we can pair up Kevin Durant with Scottie Barnes, Fred VanVleet, a head coach like Nick Nurse, and have Masai Ujiri make some incredible moves to try and get other pieces around Kevin Durant, I think that team would be one of the best in the Eastern Conference, and we would be able to at least get to a finals. Now, what happens in the finals, that's for anyone to guess, but at least putting ourselves in a position to compete for a title there. But I wouldn't do any of that if it meant giving up Scottie Barnes. I'm not giving away Scottie Barnes for 2 years of Kevin Durant being at his peak, being in his prime. Now, if Kevin Durant was 27, 28, I'd make that move today. I'd include Scottie Barnes in a trade, a first-round pick, and another player for Kevin Durant, and I'd make that trade today. Why? Because at least I'd have 6, maybe 8 years of Kevin Durant being in his prime, being one of the best in the NBA. That would give me at least 3 times we could reach the finals, right? So I'd make that move, but Kevin Durant's 34 years old. Today in 2022, sorry, you don't make that move, right? There are a number of guys that I would make. There are a number of guys I would trade Scottie Barnes for, but Kevin Durant's not one of those guys. And actually, I may make a video on those guys. But anyways, those are my thoughts. What do you guys think of this whole situation? Do you guys think that if NBA executives around the league kind of disagree with Masai Ujiri and the narrative shifts around you just don't make that trade, do you think that would influence Masai Ujiri to actually make that trade? And would you be okay with it? How would you feel? I know how I would feel, but I want to know what you guys think. So make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Like the video if you like this kind of content. It helps me out a lot. And subscribe to the channel. And until next time, kids.